exceptionally rare. Most people are unaware of their existence. However, she knows a reputable dealer who's willing to collaborate for a share of the earnings. She proposes a 60-40th split, with her receiving the smaller portion. He's in bristles at her apparent underestimation of him. She doesn't seem malicious, and he's reluctant to resort to violence. But she needs to be taught a lesson for trifling with him. He unleashes his toxic ether, enveloping himself in a threatening aura that makes her recoil instinctively. He then reveals that he initially intended to frighten her, but now he might have to eliminate her instead. She attempts to call his bluff, claiming he'd never find her if she chose to disappear. If she went into hiding, he counters by reminding her of his familiar's bite. In truth, the bite is harmless, causing only minor irritation, but she's unaware of this. He warns her that Pori's venom is potent enough to kill even an S-rank knight. The little dragon puts on a brave face, further emphasizing his dominance. In the black market, fools are the ones who lose. To triumph, one must project an image of power, with his menacing presence and the looming threat of the deadly poison. He successfully instills overwhelming terror within her, paralyzing her, rendering her incapable of resistance. Left with no alternative, the girl bursts into tears, pleading for mercy. His intimidation tactic seems to have been somewhat effective, perhaps a bit too effective. Her elusiveness poses a significant challenge. Had he not taken this course of action, she might have vanished again, leading him on a futile pursuit. Now that the crisis has subsided, he introduces himself. Trembling, she reveals her name as Bisu, daughter of the black market's leader. Now that a fragile truce has been established, Hasten requests her guidance, asking her to lead him to a place where he can sell his sunflower. Baisu escorts her to an eccentric-looking individual who introduces himself as Yacha, the undisputed champion of the entire black market, and the man universally revered as father. Hasten struggles to conceal his revulsion as he attempts to negotiate with Yacha. The sudden appearance of the ultimate authority figure for a seemingly trivial transaction feels peculiar. The reason for this unusual circumstance is Baisu, his daughter, who has orchestrated this encounter. She must have sensed a compelling reason for them to meet. Despite claiming her as his daughter, he appears unconcerned that she has brought an unfamiliar man before him. Father smiles, reminding Hasten that the laws of this domain are remarkably simple. The loser is the fool. Should she face defeat, he will remain indifferent. The stark brutality of the black market shatters Hasten's composure. The man's consumption of raw meat is implied, but you could add clarity if needed, only adds to his unease. He's been munching on monster meat this whole time they've been chatting. This just reinforces the fact that Yacha is just as monstrous as the creatures he battles in the dungeons. That's not his concern, however. He steers the conversation back to his initial reason for visiting the black market. His objective: to sell the bronze sunflower, and he's aiming for a lucrative transaction. Yacho appears intrigued, given the recent scarcity of this item. Moreover, Hassan possesses a specimen of exceptional quality. Yacho expresses a keen interest in striking a deal. He seems to be a decisive individual, suggesting a swift negotiation. They should reach an agreement without much difficulty. At least, that's Hassan's assumption, until Yacha unveils a venomous hyena, the very beast that nearly ended his life in his inaugural dungeon run. It seems Yacha harbors doubts about Hassan's genuineness. After all, Hassan managed to acquire an exceedingly rare commodity, one even the Hunters Association struggles to obtain. If he collected it himself, he must have vanquished a formidable boss monster within a treacherous poison dungeon. In that case, dispatching a venomous hyena should be child's play. His deduction was sound. Hasten, without hesitation, swiftly neutralized the hyena before Yacha could even react. With the initial task completed, he prompted Yacha for a proposition, an offer that piqued Yacha's curiosity, and the negotiation continued. Baisu, however, took offense to Hasten's tone with her father and urged him to show some deference. But Yacha silenced her with a sharp command, suddenly radiating a menacing presence. Hasten found himself paralyzed by the overwhelming aura. Then he discerned that it wasn't merely pressure confining him, but a palpable bloodlust. Simply because his daughter interjected, this unhinged individual emanated a murderous intent, so potent it inflicted a minor cut on Hasten's cheek. The situation became even more perplexing. Just how formidable this individual is supposed to be. Baisu, unfortunately, doesn't share his luck. The sheer force sends her flying, completely out of the vicinity. Yacha, seizing the opportunity, promptly resumes their negotiation. He initiates the bidding with a staggering $60 million. This bold move completely alters Hasten's perception of him. Our protagonist instantly accepts the offer, even mentally reprimanding Baisu for resorting to petty theft when she has such a well-off father. With the agreement finalized and Hasten's peculiar advances towards Yacha concluded, it's time for him to depart the black market. He heals Baisu, who still believes Puri's bite was lethal. She's astonished by the rapid recovery of her injuries. Hasten then reveals that Puri's venom was never a threat, and she was never in mortal danger. This means Baisu's tears were shed in vain. Enraged, she attempts to strike Hasten, but he effortlessly evades her attacks. The black market's regulations state that only a fool loses in this game, and she was simply too naive. Capitalizing on her clumsy attack, Haisen seized the chance to escape, warning her against pickpocketing in the future if she didn't want to be swindled. Following Heisen's departure, Yacha inquired if her wounds had fully recovered. She confirmed they had, but the scar he inflicted remained prominent on her face. His attention then shifted to the black ether on the ground. Yacha picked it up. It felt viscous and repulsive. When he'd struck Heisen with his bloodlust earlier, their ethers had clashed, resonating against one another. He'd realized the boy possessed a surprisingly potent level of ether. Its sensation evoked a memory from his youth, a confrontation with someone who had utterly crushed his spirit, reducing him to begging for death. The woman had refused, relentlessly urging him to rise and fight. A condescending smirk plastered on her face. Heisen's ether was reminiscent of that woman's, evoking unsettling recollections for the black market leader. Back in his homeland, Songhua readies Hasen for his journey to the Hunter Association. Thanks to the proceeds from selling the bronze sunflower, he managed to afford the Hunter exam registration fee. Now his sister attempts to tidy him up and improve his appearance, hoping he'll impress the examiners. That would be perfectly reasonable. Except he isn't going for the actual examination yet. He's simply registering. And despite looking his best, such elaborate preparations seem excessive for mere registration. He heads towards the Hunter Association building, and along the way, two individuals observe him as he walks past. One remarks on his seemingly frail physique, questioning why someone so seemingly weak would attempt the hunter exam. Judging a hunter by their appearance is incredibly superficial, yet the man can't help but feel a sense of disdain towards Hasen. They remain unaware that Hasen overheard their entire conversation. He vows to etch their faces into his memory, swearing that once he becomes a hunter, he'll refuse to heal them, ever. However, their cruel words bring his skin blemishes back to the forefront of his mind. He believed they were fading, but they apparently still look quite disfiguring. As he submits his registration form, the woman behind the counter hastily processes his paperwork and curtly dismisses him. Even she seems repulsed by his appearance. He takes the document and turns to go, but her lingering look of disgust, even as he walks away, stings. She calls for the next applicant, and the next young man seems more preoccupied with hurrying forward than approaching the counter. He, too, is unsettled by Jason's registration, and he worries that someone as frail as him joining their ranks will only diminish their reputation. The women at the reception desk recognize him as the infamous Naked Yujuan. He flashes a smile and urges them to keep his presence here discreet. Apparently, he's a well-known figure and prefers to avoid public knowledge of his hunter aspirations for now. The girls are thrilled by the encounter and readily vow to safeguard his secret. They assure him it won't leave this building. With Hasten's application finalized, it's time for him to head home. Departing the premises, he spots a lone protester outside. Clutching a sign, she condemns the Glory Guild for abandoning Gabongdong in the wake of a catastrophic disaster. Public demonstrations seem to have dwindled lately. Someone hurriedly approaches the woman, urging her to disperse before the authorities are summoned. Hazen observes them, pondering if he could have intervened, somehow rescuing the people of Guangdong. Had he awakened sooner? The woman's distress intensifies when instructed to vacate the premises. Clutching the man's shirt, she wails inconsolably about her deceased child, as the man persists in his attempts to usher her away. If Hasten had roused himself earlier, perhaps this woman wouldn't be driven to such a desperate demonstration. This marks the third day of her solitary protest, and at this rate, her body will surely succumb to exhaustion. Hasten's fists clench involuntarily, fueled by anger, as the woman pleads for a single audience with the association president, only to have her entreaties rebuffed. The tumultuous scene is abruptly interrupted by the arrival of a more menacing figure. He is the one who dispatched the previous man to quell the woman's protest, but it seems he's now forced to intervene and personally address the situation. That man's name is Nam Hiddick, he snarled, an E-rank knight affiliated with the association. Shoving his subordinate aside, the man strode towards the woman, a menacing expression twisting his features. Something about his demeanor filled Hasten with a deep unease. He leveled a threat at the woman, reminding her that he'd already issued a warning to cease her current activities, but she had persistently disregarded them. He raised a fist, the woman trembling before him, and lectured his subordinate. If you want obedience, your actions must be swift and decisive. With that, he lashed out, his hand a blur of motion. His fist connected with something solid, sending a cloud of dust swirling into the air. He continued his brutal lesson, sneering at the woman. You should have heeded my words from the start. Her constant defiance, he claimed, had forced his hand to such extreme measures. But it seems he'll need to reteach his lesson, as someone intervened, preventing his fist from connecting with the helpless woman. Hazen couldn't simply stand idly by, witnessing an innocent woman suffer an assault from such an arrogant man. Fury was etched on his face as he tightened his grip on the man's hand. Nam Hiddick recoiled, withdrawing his hand, completely unperturbed by the sudden appearance of this stranger. He demanded the man step aside so he could finish his work. Hazen ignored his words, ordering him to remain still. If he valued his life, he was infuriated that a hunter affiliated with the association would abuse their authority against a civilian. Nam argued he was merely performing his official duties and questioned our protagonist's right to interfere. Hazen refused to listen and declared himself a hunter entrant, simultaneously unleashing his ether. This further provoked Nam Hiddick, who commanded Hazen to withdraw his ether before the situation escalated, while releasing his own ether in response, which radiates a fiery aura. The two seem poised for a brawl, and the woman attempts to defuse the tension before it escalates further. Tyson reassures her there's no need for concern, confidently declaring his inevitable victory. This arrogance only further infuriates Namate, who readies himself to attack. However, this defiance breaks Hassan's explicit command to remain still. Our protagonist is more than willing to demonstrate the repercussions of such disobedience. With lightning speed, he grabs the arrogant man's face before he can react and slams him violently into the ground. A single blow leaves the man trembling, visibly shaken. He struggles to summon the strength to rise. Yet through gritted teeth, he vows to kill Hassan. Humiliation fuels his rage, building intensely within him. In response, Hassan calmly crouches beside him and mocks the man, listing his meager skills directly to his face. Nam Hiddick prefado finishes. As he hears his abilities rattled off like targets on an assassination list, Hasten then encroaches upon the man's personal space, snatching the badge from his collar.